Tormenta Rampaging Run is the brand new for 2026 roller coaster coming to Six Flags Over Texas. What's up guys, I'm the East Coaster fan, and today we're going to be taking an in-depth look at this brand new, world's first Giga dive coaster. So buckle up because we're going to be diving deep into this ride, looking at the layout, the appearance, the theming, even some other logistics that really only I care about. So if you're interested in learning about this record-breaking roller coaster, get ready because we're gonna dive deep into it right now. So Tormenta Rampaging Run, or as Jeffrey Seabird at the announcement said, Tormenta! Which is how I'm gonna call it pretty much for the rest of this video, just Tormenta, is a new roller coaster that is coming in 2026 to Six Flags Over Texas. If you're not familiar with this place, it's an amusement park that's located in Arlington, Texas, right between Dallas and Fort Worth. It's in a great location, and it is actually the original Six Flags park, opening in the 1960s. In the past few years, Six Flags Over Texas has gotten some, let's call it, interesting additions. A lot of things in the flat ride department, some of which aren't even there anymore, like their Super Loop and Tourbillon ride. And in the coaster department, most of their recent additions have been clone models, such as with Aquaman and Joker. Their last original custom coaster was New Texas Giant in 2011, but as you can already tell by this attraction, this ride is much bigger. Looking at this coaster in the grand scope of Six Flags, this is really their first major move since the companies merged, both Legacy Six Flags and Cedar Fair. If you look at Legacy Six Flags parks, this is actually going to be one of the largest coasters that's ever been built for one of those properties. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but this might be the biggest coaster they've built since Kingda Ka. Long live the king. If you look at Cedar Fair, this is the biggest coaster they've built since Top Thrill 2, but that's really just a spike. If you want to go way back to a coaster of a similar scale, you have to look at Orion in 2020, and even further back to 2015 when Fury 325 opened. Now with a height of 309 feet, it's going to be taller than Pantherian at King's Dominion, but still shorter than both Millennium Force and Fury 325. But that doesn't matter because this isn't a traditional Giga coaster, it is a dive coaster. And in that category, it really just shatters all the records. There are a few more things I just want to point out about this attraction that make it really interesting. This is going to be the park's second B&M roller coaster after Batman the Ride, which I found kind of interesting. And in terms of looping coasters, I mean, the park has a few, but this is a great step in the right direction in terms of a modern looping coaster at this park. I mean, Joker goes upside down, but that's a 40 free spin. If you want to go back to their last looping coaster edition, that would have been Batman the Ride. This is coming in 2026, and in the announcement that was done by the park, they marked this as a, quote, transformational renovation of the park, in which it's already begun and is going to continue to happen. So, you could see Tormenta as really the first step in this move that's already been done to make this park better than it already is. And I think the company has a lot of pride in Six Flags Over Texas, especially since it's the first Six Flags property. Also considering the area, both Dallas, Fort Worth, very populated areas that will be drawn to this kind of attraction. I mean, people love their record breakers. There is a lot of money that is riding on the back of this attraction to be successful. And with it being a B&M roller coaster, I think the general public are gonna really enjoy it. Alright, let's get into the records that are being broken by this ride. Now, in the announcement, they claim that there are 6 records, but there's actually more. And I'll go into those in just a sec, but let's go through the 6 that they pointed out right at the very beginning. As I already mentioned, this coaster is going to be taking some records away from the now former biggest dive coaster, Yukon Striker. It is beating Yukon in the height, length, and speed categories. So Tormenta is going to hit a height of 309 feet, which is 86 feet taller than Yukon Striker. That's really crazy, actually. It'll have the highest dive coaster drop of 285 feet, which is 40 feet longer than Yukon Striker's. Also notice that one is not 300, so that's very interesting. It'll be nearly 600 feet longer than Yukon Striker at 4,200 feet of track. Oh wait, sorry, hold on. 4,199 feet of track. Very specific, B&M, okay. With a speed of 87 miles per hour, it'll also be the fastest dive coaster, beating Yukon Striker by about 7 miles per hour. Interestingly, this makes Tormenta right outside the top 10 for the fastest roller coasters in the world. Now that does include Falcon's Flight, which is going to be opening supposedly next year, but let's say this ride opens before Falcon's Flight, then for a brief amount of time it'll be the 10th fastest coaster, which is crazy. In fact, this gives Six Flags Over Texas 2 roller coasters, both Tormenta and Titan, that go over 80 miles per hour. There's not really too many parks that can claim that. A few other records in terms of the elements on the ride, and this is very interesting. Six Flags Over Texas is gonna now be home to the tallest roller coaster loop at a height of 179 feet. Wow, that is gonna be insanely big. Currently, the record is being held by a coaster in China and a coaster in Turkey, both mock coasters, with a giant 171-foot tall loop. This loop's going to be 8 feet taller and look ginormous. But the real interesting one to me is the world's tallest Immelman, which stands at a staggering height of 218 feet. That makes this element a hyper, technically, which is crazy. Most of the roller coasters in the world don't even reach the height of this inversion. In fact, I'd say most roller coasters don't even reach the height of the vertical loop. If you want to put that into perspective, the drop on Apollo's Chariot is 210 feet. So this inversion is bigger than that entire drop. If you want to be more close to home, this inversion is going to be the same height as Mr. Freeze in the same park. And that's from the very top of the track, the part of the track that you don't even reach on Mr. Freeze. That wasn't enough? Oh, there's more. This is going to be the tallest inversion in the United States, beating out Steel Curtain Zero G Roll right after it comes off the lift hill. And it's the second tallest inversion in the entire world. Again, looking at Six Flags Qiddiya, they're opening a roller coaster called Spitfire, which is going to have a inverted top hat that's over 200 feet. My god. But that is a crazy statistic just for this single element. There are a few other smaller records that are also said in the announcement presentation, one of them being that this is going to be the tallest floorless coaster, again beating Yukon Striker, as well as it being the world's tallest coaster that has loops. In fact, it's the first Giga Coaster to go upside down entirely. Although, what I find kind of funny is that if you look at the Six Flags Over Texas website, where this ride is listed, it says that the specialty feature of Tormenta is that it goes upside down. Yeah, because that's what we're all talking about with this attraction. Not the 6 world records that it's gonna break, but the fact that it goes upside down.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind?
Let's see, how many other coasters go upside down in the park? You got Shockwave, you got Batman, you got Mr. Freeze, and you got Joker if you flip upside down. Yeah, it's gonna be very special that it goes upside down. So I've been throwing around the term dive coaster, and if you're just getting into roller coasters, I want to use this time to explain what a dive coaster is. But before I do that, if you're liking this analysis of Tormenta and you're interested in all things roller coasters and amusement parks, be sure to go down and give this video a like. And if you're really enjoying the content, be sure to go down and subscribe to the East Coaster Fan YouTube channel. I make videos like this, as well as others of my theme park travels. So if you want to come along for the ride, be sure to subscribe. But anyway, going back to a dive coaster, this is a concept that's been around for a while now, and it's really been growing in popularity within the past decade or so. But why? Well, they're people pleasers. Basically, at the very top of the attraction, they hold the train there for maybe about 4 to 6 seconds. And yes, this can be seen as a gimmick by coaster enthusiasts like me, but it's a gimmick that works. As someone who's ridden multiple dive coasters now, there is nothing like the feeling of being dangled at the very top of a structure before you drop. It is cool looking down, you can like wave to everybody, it's really enjoyable. Now the layouts themselves afterwards aren't the most exciting in my opinion, but some dive coasters definitely do it better than others, and I feel like the more recent ones have been paced a lot better. But if we're really analyzing this attraction, I actually want to go back and take a look at really how long we've known about this ride, because this might be a shocker to people who have like no insight into this industry, but as a coaster enthusiast, this has actually been a long time coming. You see, back in August of 2024 last year, surveys were sent to the different Six Flags properties discussing multiple different concepts, and one was sent to Six Flags Over Texas talking about an indoor-outdoor dark ride coaster, a launched family thrill coaster, which would have been the quote world's longest family coaster, and a Giga dive coaster. Ultimately, we know which direction they went in, but in November of last year, Six Flags released a bolded list of additions that were coming to the Six Flags parks, and we saw that Over Texas would be getting a record-breaking dive coaster. Way to announce it, I guess. But it's been fun kind of keeping track of everything since that date. We've known that it's going to be a record-breaking dive coaster, and over the course of basically November 2024 to now, we saw the park slowly teasing the attraction with hashtags like Drop the Gate, having other teasers inside the park and out, and overall just hyping up this attraction. And I'm happy that the announcement pretty much delivered what we wanted. I think it's really going to be a spectacle of a ride. In fact, let's talk about the appearance of the coaster right now. It is going to be located in a fantastic spot at Six Flags Over Texas. It's going in the former location of Lava Bora, which was an intimate bobsled that closed at the end of the 2024 season. And construction has already started on this attraction. In fact, they stated during the announcement that the 309-foot lift hill will be completed by the end of October. So this is already going to dramatically change the skyline of Six Flags Over Texas in just the course of a month. And if construction is well paced, they said that they hope to have most of the layout complete by the end of the year. Tormenta's gonna have a tan color overall with ivory colored rails and darker supports, basically mimicking the look of a bull, which this ride is themed around. But my favorite part of the appearance of this roller coaster is that this is truly a front gate coaster. If you don't know what that term is, basically it's the coaster that you see right when you get into the park. It's positioned perfectly where when you're driving into Six Flags Over Texas, you're going to be staring directly at the beyond vertical drop, which is absolutely fantastic. It'll create some great visuals in the parking lot as well as in the park itself. It's just going to look ginormous. Within the park, Tormenta is going to be in an area known as Rancho de la Tormenta, a plaza that's filled with canopies of colorful banners and Spanish music, and also include a new restaurant called Cocina Abuela. I haven't been in Spanish class in a while, but if my Spanish is correct, that's Grandma's Kitchen, and it should provide some great Spanish cuisine really fitting in the Spain area of the park. Building off of that is the theme that this attraction is going to have, which is all about the running of the bulls. The press release really said this well, so I'm just going to read kind of directly from it. Quote, "The story of Rancho de la Tormenta Plaza and Cocina Abuela Rancho de la Tormenta, an immersive themed area depicting an old and secluded Spanish village, will warmly welcome guests with vibrant colorful banners and jubilant Spanish music. This fictional town was initially named after the storms, tormentas, that swept across the plains it occupied. But that soon changed when the birth of a legendary bull that grew to be the most feared and respected animal in the land. Known for his fierce strength and incredible speed, matadors from all over Spain traveled to face him, but none could defeat him. His name was Tormenta." There are a few more things about the design of this coaster that I want to discuss before going through the layout. This is manufactured by Bulger Mabyard, or B&M. Is going to have 3 rows, with each row holding 8 riders for a total of 24 riders per train. For reference, this is the same model of train that we've seen on rides like Yukon Striker at Canada's Wonderland. It's going to have the same vests as well. What's interesting about this train, and I'm going to get a little nerdy for a second, is that we haven't seen this train since Yukon Striker. After that ride, we had Emperor, which was a small 6-seater, and then we moved on to the 7-seaters, starting with Dr. Diabolical. It was when they moved to the 7-seaters that we started noticing a little bit of a shake in the train or track profiling, but it's an interesting pattern I've noticed since they moved to the 7 seats per row. Personally, I'm happy to have the 8 rows back, just because I'm never the biggest fan of odd rows. It is technically true you get the middle seat in that 7-rider row, but I think it's just better having 8, and the train's gonna be a little bit wider, so if you're sitting on the ends, you'll be a little more away from the track. Maybe there'll be some other modifications that we don't know about yet, and if it's anything to make the ride as smooth as possible, that would be great. A few things with some of the footers that I noticed. The main drop is actually going to have a really unique footer and that is this rectangular support that I'm gonna call the Giga Footer. This is really something we've only seen on B&M's traditional Giga Coasters like Fury 325, Orion, and that's just due to the height and speed that this coaster is going to reach. You need as much support as possible. Also, the last implement of the attraction has footers that extend into the parking lot, and from the looks of it, I mean, this is just the animation right now, but it looks like you'll be able to go up to these supports and touch them if you wanted to. They're like right next to the parking lot, so you could park your car right next to a support of Tormenta if you'd like. Alright, let's finally go through this coaster layout. You're gonna start by leaving the station and making a 180-degree dip before the lift hill. This is gonna be one massive lift hill going at an angle of 45 degrees. And that might sound like it's normal, but it's actually pretty steep for a lift hill. Going up, you're gonna feel like you are on your back. But once you reach the top, you're going to get a nice panoramic view of the entire area. You're going to be making a 90-degree left-hand turn and face towards the park. And this view is going to be awesome. I cannot wait to be on this coaster and just look over everything at the top of Tormenta. After this, you'll be dangled at the top of the roller coaster, and you'll eventually drop. And it's a beyond vertical drop. You're going to be hitting 95 degrees, which is the same as a coaster like Iron Menace. I really enjoy this feature of the newer dive coasters, as that pull inwards really lifts you out of the seat and creates a better whip on the drop. You are going to be going fast. Before I end on dive coasters, you got a lot of wind in your face, but I'm really excited to see how much wind you get at the bottom of this drop. Another note is that I love how this drop just threads perfectly through the upcoming cutback element. Like, it is perfectly symmetrical, and I absolutely love it. Now, after you drop, you're going to have this really large pullout, and that's just to alleviate the amount of G-force. It'll still be very intense, but it needs to be this wide just to account for this giga drop. But you'll still be led into the world's tallest implement, which again is going to be absolutely massive. Following this inversion, you're actually going to get very close on the left-hand side to a support on the cutback. In fact, there's multiple spots on this coaster that come very close to supports and track pieces, so I'll try to point those out once we get to each one of them. After the implement is when you go into the record-breaking loop, which again is just going to look ginormous, and followed by a second implement, which is shaped a lot like the one on Yukon Striker. In fact, most of this first part of the ride really reminds me of Yukon Striker. It's really just missing that 0G roll that's before the loop. Other than that, everything's very similar. After this element, you're going to hit the mid-course, which is going to be really tall. Within this animation, I know there's forced perspective with the flyover, but it looks very similar to the height of New Texas Giant. You're going to have a nice drop off of this mid-course brake run, pretty steep as well, where you're going to be looking directly at the parking lot and dropping underneath this turn. Honestly, from this drop, you're gonna feel like you could put your hands up and touch the track. It's gonna have a pretty tight clearance. And from this drop off the mid-course brake run, you're gonna enter your third implement. Yes, there are 3 implements on this ride. And while they are profiled a little bit different from each other, it is kind of weird that this ride has 3. This third implement, though, is the smallest one, and will be the tightest on the ride. So I feel like you're going to get a lot of G-force going up this implement, and a lot of whip coming out of it. Also, the left-hand side is going to come close to supports again, including that Giga support as well. This leads you into your cutback element, which I believe is the very first cutback on a dive coaster. In fact, B&M has not really done many cutbacks in general, so it's kind of interesting that they decided to put one on this attraction. The exit of this cutback will once again bring you really close to the Giga support. After this cutback, you'll go into a right turn that leads you into your final brake run. A few more near misses here. The left-hand side goes near support once again, and the right side is going to get very close to that drop off the mid-course brake run. And with that, we've come to the end of the ride, which has a total ride time of 2 minutes and 54 seconds from dispatch to the final brake run. But let's discuss this final brake run because it is quite a lengthy one. Now, it was confirmed that this ride is going to hold 3 trains. So if you have each train in one of your block zones, you could have 1 in the station and potentially 2 in this final brake run. That would be your double stack for this coaster. I highly doubt that they'd stop you on the mid-course brake run. I think that's mainly just to slow you down, but it is able to stop the train if it needed to. There is no doubt about it. This last brake run is really long, and I'm very surprised that they're making it this way. I mean, all the Giga Coasters have quite a lengthy final brake run, but I'm curious how much speed you're going to have going into this, in which you need this long of a brake run. But anyway, that's my rant about that. So before I give my thoughts, I just wanted to make a few more notes about this attraction that I couldn't really fit into any other main category. I just want to talk about them out loud right now. First is the name, Tormenta Rampaging Run. Honestly, I've come to a point now as a coaster enthusiast where I look at some coasters and I don't even call them their full names anymore. So like, Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger. No one ever says that full name as a coaster enthusiast. Or maybe even general public. People just say, oh, Dr. Diabolical. I think this coaster is going to have a very similar identity where, like I have this entire video, people are just going to call it Tormenta, not even include the Rampaging Run. Either way, it's just a name, it's not going to matter in the long run, and the logo does look really sick. The coaster is going to have a height requirement of 48 inches, which is great. It'll allow younger kids to get on this attraction, and really, it's a great height requirement for this style of ride. Even if you aren't tall enough, or maybe you're intimidated by the attraction, there'll still be a way to see the ride, and that's through the train. It's going to be passing right underneath some of the elements and give you some unique perspectives of Tormenta. Also in the animation is the Conquistador, which I found very interesting because that was announced a few weeks ago to be permanently removed. So I assume this animation was just made beforehand. I highly doubt this indicates a new version is coming. If we look at the third Immelman that juts out a bit, you can actually see surrounding that is a new sidewalk that guests will be able to take to and from the park entrance. And I like how it wraps completely around the ride and you can stand there on the sidewalk, basically looking right where the coaster drops. Alright, let's discuss the whole Giga thing. Of course, coaster enthusiasts be coaster enthusiasts. They're gonna question whether or not this ride is really a Giga Coaster or not, because it is a height of 309, but it has a drop of 285. So you have people that are like, oh, it needs to be both height and speed for it to be a Giga Coaster. I mean, it doesn't need to have a drop of 300 feet, just the height. Look at rides like Orion. But look at some hyper coasters, like Apollo's Chariot. That isn't 200 feet high, but has a 200-foot drop. So maybe the drop dictates whether it's a Giga. These are just coaster enthusiasts being coaster enthusiasts. Honestly, I just see it as a very unique situation. It's like Red Force. That ride is technically a Giga Coaster as well, but it's not really seen as a traditional Giga Coaster, more of like a tower coaster. This is more of just a dive coaster. It's the biggest one, it happens to be Giga sized, but it's still a dive coaster, so that's just how I see it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below whether or not you think this is a Giga though. So we've talked a lot about this attraction, but I want to end this with my overall thoughts. Overall, I think this is a really great attraction for Six Flags Over Texas, but it's not without its flaws. One is that I really question about how smooth this attraction is going to be, based on the recent history of some B&M roller coasters. Some of their dives, like Iron Menace, have a shake to them, and I've heard Wrath of Rakshasa has one as well, and some of their newer coasters, like I just rode Penguin Trek and Phoenix Rising in Florida, and those have a little bit of shake to them. So they really gotta have those tolerances correct, and the parts manufactured with tight precision to make sure that the coaster rides as smooth as possible, especially when you're going at speeds that could make a shake like that really uncomfortable. I'm also not a fan of how long the brake runs are. I mean, this is something that we've seen from B&M before, but I still think it's kind of an issue, especially when other manufacturers can work with much shorter brake runs. It makes me think that you could have maybe fit one more element on this ride. But again, those are really just nitpicks. Overall, I love the theme of this attraction. It seems well paced, and I love its placement as a front gate coaster, as well as just being at Six Flags Over Texas. It's a great addition for that property. It's also a great anniversary present for the original Six Flags park, and really gives some respect to that property. It's very historic, and I'm happy that the new chain is giving it a ride that it definitely deserves. So with all that said, that is my overall analysis of Tormenta Rampaging Run. Does this look like a roller coaster that you'd be eager to ride? Is this something that you're planning to ride next year? Leave it in the comments below, and I'm curious to see what you guys think of this attraction, as well as some of my analysis. And with that being said, we'll see Tormenta in 2026.